In the frozen hush of the void, Earth drifted like an abandoned relic, scarred, weathered, and forsaken. They called it a peace ruling, a justified sanction. But to Daniel Reich, captain of the Archangel, it was exile, raw and merciless. The Galactic Council cloaked the act in polished speeches, false courtesies, and manufactured remorse. Yet when all was said, they had cast an entire species out of the galactic heart and sealed the door tight. Daniel could still see the day humanity's passage through hyperlanes was revoked. One by one, the jump gates around Earth flashed red, then vanished to black. No entry, no escape. Commerce ended. Aid vanished. The envoys never returned. Even the synthetics, the Council's prized impartial envoys, shut down their relays and slipped from orbit. Earth was abandoned. The cause? An incident on Cygnus 9, a mining outpost jointly run by humans and Threxian workers. A brawl turned fatal. A Threxian nobles erranded up skewered on a human exosuit. The reports called it accident. Daniel had seen them himself, but no one cared. That single death unraveled everything. The Council staged trials that mocked justice. Earth's voices were muted, dismissed, outvoted every session. Then came the decree. Indefinite expulsion from the galactic grid, reclassified, isolated origin species. To them, humanity was a contagion to be sealed away. But they overlooked one truth. Humans don't fade in silence. The Archangel was forged in that bitter void. A super-heavy war cruiser bound together with fury and resolve. No government on Earth had sanctioned it. Those had collapsed in the fallout. It rose from the ruins, pieced together by scrap rights, rogue theorists, defected admirals, and banished scholars, a patchwork monster of alloy, plasma, and sheer will. Daniel stood on the forward observation deck, staring into the eternal void. His features were worn past his 38 years, eyes set deep, scanning the cosmos like he expected the stars themselves to betray him. A scar marked him from temple to jawline, a relic of the New Geneva riots during the Famine War. He wore no insignia now, only dark fatigues and a heavy coat lined with shielding weave. Here, no regulations mattered, only endurance. Behind him, the vessel throbbed with life, half its stations manned by trained officers, the rest by ex-convicts, drifters, and souls with nothing left. A ship of orphans and exiles. Yet it moved like a predator, unyielding, insatiable. The comms sparked alive. Captain, scan of Sector 8 Gamma complete. Derelict Threxian freighter located. Looks ripe. Daniel didn't smile. His voice went hard, edged with cold intent. Send boarding teams. Strip it clean. Leave a mark. He didn't need to spell it out. They understood. Burn a sigil into the hull. A jagged human handprint with 3 words in old Terran script. We remember everything. The Council had assumed exile would break them, that without trade, tech, and treaties, Earth would rot back into dirt. Instead, it forged them. They began to build their own gates, jury-rigged jump rings made from stolen blueprints and scavenged parts. They forged pacts with the fringes, species the Accord dismissed as primitive, volatile, or useless. Slowly, system by system, humanity spread. Not with diplomats, but with force, cold raids, brutal ambushes, and offers too dangerous to refuse. Let us dock, or we burn your moons. That was the new diplomacy. Daniel had no use for peace. Peace had been the knife in their back. He had one aim: make the stars remember that humanity lived, not as beggars, but as something to be feared. They would wait no longer. As the Archangel swung her engines toward the next target, a fuel depot on a trade route by the Mara cluster, Daniel thought of the council members who'd smiled him into exile. One day, he told himself, we'll come back. Not to plead, not to explain, to take. He left the observation deck and walked to the bridge. Set course, he said. Next target, CXS-7 fuel depot, council-backed. Make it loud. Silence before the strike always cut deepest. Daniel sat in the command chair as the ship slipped under full cloak along the Mara edge. Ahead, CXS-7, a Council-run facility orbiting an asteroid belt veined with plasma vents, the kind of place that kept fleets fed and empires afloat. It was crewed by low-tier contractors and watched by 3 patrol frigates, insignificant, their first mistake. "Status?" Daniel asked. Lieutenant Merrick didn't look up. Cloak holding at 98%. No contacts, no distress. They're blind. The boarding teams were suiting up. Alpha and Bravo, 40 souls hungry for this hit. Daniel nodded. Let them take it. No prisoners. No warnings. No cheers. Only the tacit understanding that this was justice, not diplomacy. Not war for glory, but retribution. He closed his eyes briefly. Behind them, Earth still burned, not with fire but with rot. Half the planet was uninhabitable. Climate systems had failed. Food rationed at gunpoint. Supply chains severed. Nations preying on themselves. The Council called it natural selection. Earth had supposedly failed the moral tests for reintegration, like they were some lab experiment gone wrong. But Earth didn't die. It adapted. And now they were out here in their rusting, weaponized graveyard of a ship and still moving forward. "Ready jump pods," Daniel said. The Archangel tilted slightly as its lower bays opened. Twin pods armed with hull-piercing drives and carrying 20 warriors each dropped from the undercarriage like silent sharks in the black ocean of space. Seconds to impact. Daniel stood and walked to the viewport, watching the depot slowly rotate beneath them like a helpless animal. This was the second strike in a chain. First was the Threxian freighter. Stripped, tagged, and left adrift. Now this. After this, it would be a calm relay station in neutral territory. They weren't just striking back. They were carving a path. Each move designed to send a message. We are no longer asking. The pods hit. The feed lit up on screen. Helmet cams flickered as the crews breached the depot's hull, storming the corridors. Shouts in multiple languages filled the comms. Weapons fire, screams, the buzz of electrified blades tearing through Council security bots. But Daniel's eyes were fixed on one thing. A corner cam showing the station overseer, a Volari bureaucrat with 2 sets of eyes and a gut full of privilege curled behind a console, stammering into a comms unit that wasn't connected. Daniel turned off the feed. The second barrage followed immediately. Theta 4 never had a chance. Drones blinked out one by one, slagged into molten streaks that drifted uselessly into the void. The Corvette fired back, a desperate volley, but its rounds dissolved against Archangel's plating. Daniel didn't even bother to order evasive maneuvers. The ship pressed forward like a predator stalking prey. Station defenses offline, Merrick confirmed. Corvette engines failing. They're dead in the black. Finish it, Daniel said. A single rail slug punched through the Corvette's spine, splitting it in 2. The pieces tumbled apart, glowing with internal fires, then went cold. Silence returned. The station cracked open with surgical precision. Boarding teams poured through the breach, securing corridors, cutting power, planting charges. This time there was no hesitation. Everyone knew it was a feint. Noise, blood, fire, all to pull the Council's gaze away while they chased the phantom signal. Daniel stood at the viewport, watching the station's glow dim. He didn't feel triumph. Only calculation. Another scar carved into the Council's map, another breadcrumb for them to follow while humanity slipped into the dark. Ray's voice cut the quiet. Message triangulation underway. We'll have coordinates within 6 hours. The signal isn't local. It came from deep. Past the mapped sectors. Good, Daniel said. His eyes never left the debris field. Then that's where we go. Into the dark. Ray hesitated. And if the Council sends more than patrols? If they send fleets? Daniel turned, voice low and certain. Then they'll learn what exile forged in us. They'll learn Earth doesn't lose twice. Not for show, but for destruction. Structural points, power banks, comm spires. They weren't here to capture this one. They were here to erase it. Status. Daniel barked. Merrick was a blur of efficiency at the console. Drones disabled. Corvette is retreating. They're calling for backup. Let them. They'll be late. He moved to the side screens. A live feed showed the relay station breaking apart. Internal fires spewing into the void. Airlocks rip it open. No boarding parties this time. No marks left behind. This was a surgical burn. Total blackout. He knew the message this would send. Someone out there still had teeth. Someone out there didn't just want justice. They wanted blood. Good. The moment the last piece of the station flared into white-hot debris, Daniel turned to Ray. Jump drive status. Charged and holding. Then jump us now. Full burn to sector 01199X. There was a moment's pause. Merrick looked up. We've never been out that far. That's fringe territory. Past Therum. No charts, no friendly routes. Daniel gave him a stare that stopped questions cold. We weren't invited to the galaxy. We don't need permission to explore it. With a hum that vibrated in the bones, the Archangel vanished into the dark. The jump lasted 17 minutes. Not long in real space, but time seemed to stretch in jump space. The stars warped, bent like glass underwater. Men often went mad staring out windows during a jump, so Daniel had those sealed. No one needed more ghosts in their heads. When they dropped out, the galaxy looked different. Sector 01199X was dead quiet. No planetary beacons, no patrols, no signs of civilization, just scattered asteroids, radiation belts, and a dying sun on the edge of collapse. It was a graveyard, beautiful but lifeless, until they picked up the ping. Faint, distorted, but real coordinates, Daniel said, walking to the sensor bank. Rye tapped into the signal there. Something's embedded in the second moon of that gas giant. Looks buried. A facility number a ship. Daniel's heart thudded. They approached cautiously. As they neared the moon's surface, the shape took form. A massive structure fused into the rock itself. Ancient in design, but unmistakably human. Not council approved, not regulation, built in secret. Maybe decades ago, maybe more, and not alone. Around it floated other ships. Smaller than Archangel, but bristling with weaponry. 10, maybe 12, forming a loose perimeter. The sensor readouts flickered. Some kind of cloaking interference. Then a message came through, not on any public channel, but directly into their encryption stream. Identify yourselves or be fired upon. You've entered restricted territory. Daniel stepped forward. This is Captain Daniel Reich of the warship Archangel. Origin Earth, exiled by Council Order 44, Kappa. We received your signal. A long pause. Then the voice returned calmer, older, like gravel under iron. Welcome to Bastion. We've been waiting. Docking took 30 minutes. Tensions were high. Noon trusted easily this far from home. As Daniel stepped onto the platform, he was met by a man built like an armored tank, weathered with deep lines across his face and eyes that had seen more death than years. The insignia on his chest wasn't official. It was homemade. A stylized phoenix over a broken world. Commander Joan Velt, the man said, extending a gloved hand. Or what's left of him. I was First Fleet before the collapse. Daniel gripped it hard. Daniel Reich, captain of the Archangel. I didn't think anyone survived out here. We didn't survive, Velt said grimly. We endured. He led Daniel through a metal corridor lit by old plasma lines and patchwork wiring. Soldiers passed them with hollow stares and old gear. The smell of oil and sterilizer was thick. This was no utopia. This was a fortress carved out of exile and madness. They reached a central chamber where a projection of the galaxy hovered. Red marks the Council's territory, green fringe systems, and then in blue a web of hidden paths leading from this moon outward. You've been building, Daniel said. For 23 years, Velt nodded. We saw what the Council was doing long before Earth got the boot. We went dark. Fake doer destruction, hit our ships, started recruiting from the broken edges. Daniel looked at the map again, and now Felt's voice darkened. Now we've got a fleet, a real one. Not enough to win, not yet, but enough to hurt them badly. He turned. Your relay strike. It lit up every council sensor grid. They're on alert. That was risky. Daniel stepped closer. Everything we do is risky. They cut us off, left us Toro. Earth's a husk, and I won't spend the rest of my life scavenging scraps in the dark. We're taking something back. Velt studied him. You've got fire, he said. But fire without aim burns everything. We've seen others like you. Raiders, pirates, vengeful ghosts. You want revenge? I want a war. Daniel didn't blink. Then show me how to fight it. They spent the next few days sharing data. Velt's operation was deeper than Daniel expected. They had ex-consul tech, rogue AI units, even a working prototype of a gate disruptor, a weapon capable of collapsing council jump lanes in transit. Suicide missions had bought them blueprints. Every ship was repurposed from wreckage. Their engineers were more chemist than scientist, improvising in ways no bureaucracy would allow. We call ourselves the Bastion, Velt explained, because this is the last stronghold off free humanity. And the others? Daniel asked. There are others, Velt confirmed, scattered, hidden. Some went feral, others sold out. You'll find slavers who speak Earth tongue, mercenaries who wear our colors but work for the highest bidder. But us, we still fight for Earth. Daniel stared at the map, at the old data streams showing the Council's border fleets, their academy planets, their war factories. Then give me a target, he said. Velt grinned. That's the spirit. The mission was named Operation Cinderfall. Ammunition's World, Council designation, Valus Prime. Not critical, not fortified, but symbolic. It supplied weapons to 3 major fleets, including the ones hunting exiled human ships. And more importantly, it was considered impenetrable until now. Bastion had the codes. Archangel had the firepower. Together they had a chance. Daniel stood once again on his bridge, watching as the new fleet formed behind him. Not hundreds of ships, not yet, but dozens. Silent, deadly, carved from betrayal and welded with fury. Make no mistake, he told his screw, his voice grim and steady. This isn't about survival anymore. This is about the future. They tried to erase us. Now we write the next chapter in blood. Lights dimmed, engines roared, and humanity, exiled, broken, enraged, prepared to strike back at the galaxy that left them to die. The night before the assault on Valus Prime, Daniel Reich didn't sleep. Sleep was a luxury, and he didn't believe in luxuries. Not anymore. Not when his ship was docked to a covert Bastion cruiser and orbiting just beyond Council sensor range, less than 12 hours from a planetary siege. He paced the dim bridge of the Archangel, boots echoing on the steel. The usual ambient lights were off, and only the crimson glow from the war map kept the shadows at bay. The system rotated before him, Valus Prime and its moons. Council scan said it was nothing special, but the Bastion's intelligence proved otherwise. 3 weapons facilities buried deep under polar ice, automated rail networks feeding orbital cannons, supply ships moving every 6 hours like blood through arteries. It was more than a munitions depot. It was a machine of war. Still breathing, Captain? Daniel turned. Ray stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She'd shed her usual tactical vest and now wore just a combat harness over a plain black shirt. Her face half-lit by the soft map glow. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, were unreadable. Barely, Daniel muttered. You? She shrugged. Been through worse, Daniel smirked. Have you? No, she admitted. But I'm getting used to the taste of suicide. He walked to the side viewport, peering out at the black void between their fleet and Valus Prime. This isn't suicide. This is a message. To who? The Council, she asked. They won't hear it. They'll just tighten their grip. Daniel looked over his shoulder. Then we speak louder. At Aero 400-hour ship time, the fleet moved. Archangel led the charge, flanked by Bastion warships. The Dagger, Hollow Sun, and Calros. Smaller frigates darted behind them like wolves guarding the pack. The plan was madness. Divide and overwhelm. Strike 3 different points at once. Force the Council to split their defense protocols. Daniel took his command seat, strapped in, and gave the order with a calm that didn't match the fire boiling inside. Commence Operation Cinderfall. Engines screamed into life. The ships slipped from their shrouds, breaking from the dark like phantoms. Within minutes, alarms lit up across Vivelis Prime. The planet's defense grid activated, but too late. Their perimeter satellites, meant to warn them hours in advance, had been disabled days before by Bastion saboteurs. Within 60 seconds, orbital skirmishes erupted. Marek's voice echoed across the bridge. Engaged defensive platforms, their AIs scrambling responses. 1, maybe 2 autofleets coming online. Let them come, Daniel growled. We're not leaving. Missiles stirred toward them. Hundreds of them. Fast, smart, and designed to confuse ECM systems. But Archangel wasn't just any warship. Her hull had been restructured with stolen alien alloys, and her AI had been trained not for defense, but prediction. Interceptors now, Daniel snapped. The hull pulsed. Flak cannons fired in rhythmic bursts, intercepting a swarm of incoming warheads with surgical precision. The rest, those few that made it through, glanced off armor, leaving fire streaks but no holes. Railgun online, Marek confirmed. Daniel didn't hesitate. Target that supply artery. Bring it D, or a threat. Ray entered the deck, boots soft on the floor. She carried a data slate and a look that told Daniel things weren't getting better. Councils issued a decree, she said without ceremony. Humanity is now classified a rogue threat species. Daniel didn't react. They're using the attack on Vivelis Prime to justify deploying their black fleets, she added. That made him look at her. Black fleets? He asked. Those are myths, not anymore. Bastion confirmed sightings near Syrian's Reach. Heavily cloaked, no insignia, no distress channels, just weapons. Daniel exhaled slowly. So they're done pretending we don't exist. They want to erase us before others start believing in us. He turned back to the stars. Then we hit them again. Ray hesitated. We need to think this through. We're not just fighting warships anymore. We're fighting a system that built itself over centuries. One more mistake and they'll call for extermination. Let them, Daniel said. They already tried. Earth's proof of that. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. We started something, Daniel. A movement. People are watching. Even alien factions. You want fear? Good. But if we don't lead this right, we become exactly what they said we were. He looked at her, and for the first time in days, something flickered in his eyes. Not doubt, but memory. The streets of Old Boston during the blackout riots. The food riots, children killed for protein bars, mothers selling everything to get off-world visas that never came. That's what the Council had left behind. You think I want this? He asked, voice low. You think I enjoy burning planets, sending people to die? I was an engineer, Ray. I wanted to build things. But the Council gave us no choice. They slammed the door and called it justice. If we don't fight, then all of this, everything we've done was for nothing. She didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Later that cycle, Daniel met with Commander Velt in Bastion's encrypted comms chamber. Velt looked older than before, not in body, but in bearing. There were news cars across his neck, faint burns that told a story Daniel didn't ask about. I got your message, Daniel said. What's the urgency? Velt brought up a star map. The Council's mobilizing in the Cinder Expanse. That's neutral territory. They're hunting for us, for all of us, and not just humans. They've started purging fringe species. Anyone suspected of harboring humans gets blacklisted. Some get sterilized. Daniel's fists clenched. They're forcing neutrality out of everyone, Velt continued. Even the merchant clans are folding. Only a few are resisting. Then we give them a reason to resist, Daniel growled. We hit something bigger. Velt gave him a hard look. You want to escalate? I want to wake the galaxy up. They've been asleep too long. Velt nodded. Then I have something. Council Archive Station Epsilon. Deep core classified data vaults. If we can get in, we'll find black files. Files they never wanted public. What kind of files? Proof of what they did to Earth, to colonies, to defectors, executions, biological tests, forced starvation protocols. If we leak that, the galaxy might finally see them for what they are. Daniel stared at the screen. Coordinates. Velt uploaded them. It won't be easy. Epsilon is protected by protocol wards. No ships, no orbiting, only one way in through their transport network. We'll need someone on the inside. Daniel thought for a moment. I know a man, a council trader. He owed me once, might still be breathing. Velt grunted. Then find him and fast before they bury that archive in a sun. Back aboard Arcanel, Daniel called a private meeting with his core crew, Merrick Ray Silo, the mechanic who once designed weapons for the council before they tried to kill his family, and Cass, a former trader who'd lost everything to council asset seizures and now flew like death itself. He laid out the mission. No one flinched, but Cass leaned forward. You sure this is worth it, Captain? This archive crap? We've done more damage with fire than we'll ever do with secrets. Daniel didn't look away. Secrets built this galaxy. Cass Council doesn't rule through strength. They rule through silence. We break that silence. We break their grip, Rye added. The galaxy's teetering. Most don't care about humans, but they care about justice. Truth. If we show them how deep the rot goes, we won't be fighting alone. Cass cracked his knuckles. Then let's go digging. The search for the traitor, Geronvas, took them 3 days. He was living under a false name in a mining colony on Ton 8, drinking himself to death and pretending not to care about the universe anymore. Daniel found him in a bar full of broken men wearing a fake face and a broken spine brace. You should have killed me the last time, Jurian hissed when Daniel confronted him. You should have died with dignity, Daniel replied. Booty offered a deal, not mercy. Never mercy, only one last job. And a promise? Help them infiltrate Archive Epsilon, and whatever secrets they found would make Jurian untouchable even if the Council survived. You really believe the truth matters? Jurian asked, coughing. Daniel looked him dead in the eye. Number, but fear does, and the truth is, the only thing left that still scares them. As Archangel prepared for the next jump, Daniel stood again in the observation bay, watching the stars shift slowly. He felt it. Something changing. Not just in him, in the crew, in the galaxy. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were building a legacy, one scar at a time. The sky above Station Epsilon looked like oil, dark, slow-moving, and ready toy night. Daniel stared through the cracked window of the stolen Council transport ship, his jaw clenched tight. Epsilon spun below them in perfect formation. A pristine white sphere with no visible openings, no docking ports, no landing bays. It hovered in space like a pearl grown in darkness. Beautiful, sterile, and impossible to breach without permission. But that's what Geronvos was for. He sat across from Daniel, hunched in the pilot's chair, hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from years of abuse, and whatever low-grade stims he used to keep himself going. Once Garen had been the head of security algorithms for the Council's Data Integrity Division, the man who designed the very locks they now planned to pick. Approach vector locked, Jurian muttered. A eye handshake initiated. They'll think we're a medical logistics vessel returning from Cygnus 7, and they won't scan deeper? Ray asked tight-lipped. Jurian gave a dry chuckle. Not unless they're sober, which none of them are, I assure you. Most of the inner core operators drink their lunch. Daniel didn't relax. How long do we have? 2 hours. Once we're inside the shell, internal monitors will go blind for about 7 minutes. That's our window to disappear. After that, if we're caught, well, you're familiar with the Council's definition of mercy. Daniel looked back toward the rear of the ship where Merrick and Silo were checking gear. Compact charges, anti-Ensor suits, neural dampeners, nothing bulky, nothing loud. This wasn't a siege. It was a surgical ghost raid. As they drifted closer, the ship shuddered gently, a sign they'd passed the first of Epsilon's perimeter scans. Jurayan held up a small key made from black glass and placed it into the console. The moment it clicked, the ship lurched. Daniel reached for his sidearm on instinct. "Relax," Jurayan muttered. "The shell's opening." Indeed, from below, the perfect surface of the station began to segment. Small panels pulling away, revealing a narrow shaft lined with magnetic tethers. "A coffin chute," Jurayan whispered. "They only use it for bodies they don't want traced. I figured they wouldn't misown." Daniel gave him a look. "You're a twisted bastard. You're the one who came to me, Captain." They descended in near total silence. Once inside the shaft, gravity shifted, locking their boots to the side wall. Ray led the way, planting a small sensor disruptor every 15 meters, just enough to break the station's passive scanning rhythm without triggering a full alert. Merrick carried the pulse carbine. Silo had the charge packs. Daniel moved last, sweeping their trail clean. The interior of Station Epsilon was nothing like Daniel expected. There were no guards, no drones. Just sterile white corridors lined with sealed doors, each with alnumeric code and no labels. The kind of design that only made sense to machines. It was quiet. Too quiet. Giron directed them through an auxiliary maintenance shaft. "All paths converge at the central core," he whispered. "But the data vault sits 20 levels down. We need to bypass at least 3 biometric locks to get there." "And you still have clearance?" Daniel asked. Jurian's grin was hollow. "Number, but I have a copy of someone who did." He produced a metal syringe from his coat and injected it into the access panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door hissed open. The air inside was colder, not just in temperature but in weight. A silence that wasn't absence, but suppression. "This is where the truth lives," Jurian muttered. "Everything the Council didn't want anyone to know. War crimes, betrayals, internal dissent, things they did even to their own species." Daniel felt a slow rage crawl up his spine. "Let's rip it open." The vault chamber was enormous. Dozens of hexagonal columns extended from floor to ceiling, each humming with light and data. Jiren moved fast, interfacing with the master console at the far end. Silo deployed a security net around them, while Merrick stood watch. "This thing houses petabytes of encoded logs," Jiren explained. "It'll take hours to copy, but I'm not just copying. I'm injecting a live virus that'll piggyback on Council-wide network updates. Once we leave, it spreads." Daniel stepped beside him. "What's in it?" Jurian paused. "Let's find out." He tapped a command. One of the columns dimmed, revealing a playback screen. The first video showed an Earth colony, lush, full of life. Children played near a food station. Council and boys S. Velt sighed and rubbed his forehead. There's always more. Daniel placed the backdoor key drive, the one Jurian had risked everything for, onto the table. "This will get use into every system the Council still thinks is secure. Military traffic, surveillance logs, economic choke points. We hit their arteries next." Velt stared at the drive for a long time. "You're escalating this into a full war. They declared war when they starved our colonies." Velt didn't argue, but then he added something that hit harder than Daniel expected. "Jirian's dead." Daniel blinked. "What?" "They found his body yesterday. Throat cut. Dumped in a freight tube near 10. Daniel's stomach turned. Jurayan had been a traitor, a coward, a bastard, but he hadn't deserved that. Not after what he'd done for them. "I want to know who did it," Daniel said coldly. Velt shook his head. "So do I, but right now we've got bigger problems. Someone's bleeding us from the inside." Back aboard the Archangel, the mood was tense. The crew had felt the shift. The early days of vengeance had given way to paranoia and fatigue. Every new face was suspect. Every ship that docked was scanned twice. Even Merrick had started sleeping with one eye open. "Cilio," the old engineer said it best one night in the Missal. "This ain't a revolution anymore," he muttered, sipping synthetic whiskey. This is survival dressed up in fancy words, and survival turns good men into monsters. Daniel overheard it, but he didn't respond because he knew Silo was right. They weren't building a future. They were tearing the old world down and praying something better rose from the ashes. Then came the message broadcast, wideband, uncoded, bold. This is Council Admiral Theon Bra speaking on behalf of the Galactic Preservation Authority. Effective immediately, all ships aiding or abetting human insurgents will be treated as hostiles. Your outposts will be neutralized. Your leaders captured. There will be no mercy. And to the human vessel Archangel. You have 72 hours to surrender your commander, Daniel Reich. If you do not, your world dies screaming. Ray slammed her fist on the console when she heard it. They're going after Earth. Daniel stood in silence, face unreadable. Merrick cursed under his breath. We left Earth to survive. Now they want to finish the job. Daniel nodded slowly. Then we stopped them. He turned to Rye. Get me eyes on their fleet. I want every route, every backup system, every jump gate. Ray hesitated. You're not going back to Earth, are you? Daniel looked her dead in the eyes. I never left. The battle for Earth was never going to be fair. The Council's Black Fleet was already en route. A dozen Dreadnought-class carriers equipped with orbital shatter cannons and high-atmo bombers. Their plan wasn't occupation. It was eraser. But Daniel had other plans. He contacted every surviving human ship, every exiled fleet, every outpost. He called in every favor, every debt, every ounce of loyalty that had been forged in blood. And they answered. Within a day, over 40 ships rallied. Frigates, corvettes, even old mining vessels refitted with plasma cores and railguns. Not a proper fleet, but enough. Enough to make history. They set course for Earth, engines burning hot through the void. Daniel stood on the bridge watching his home world grow larger on the screen. The blue was faded, the green was withered, but it was still Earth, still home. He reached for the comms. To every soul still standing, he said, his voice firm, hard, and filled with fire. We were exiled, starved, broken, but we're still here. We're not fighting for revenge anymore. We're fighting for what comes next. He paused. Let them come. Let them bring their fleets, their laws, their false gods. We're not afraid of the dark anymore. He looked at Merrick. Prepare for impact, because no matter what happened next, win or lose, the galaxy would never forget what humanity did when it was pushed too far. The stars above Earth were no longer still. From orbit, Theon's familiar constellations were blurred by movement. Dozens of ships carving trails of light, exhaust, and fury into the void. The Black Fleet loomed overhead, a celestial executioner. Its hulls blacker than the void around them, armed with weaponry designed not for war but obliteration. But between them and Earth stood humanity, ragtag, unwanted, outnumbered, but not broken. The Archangel led the charge. Inside the bridge thrummed with energy. Daniel Reich stood at the center, wrapped in silence, watching the enemy form up like a wall of death. His face was hollowed by months of war and sleepless nights, but his eyes burned with something sharper than rage. Purpose report, he ordered. Merrick's voice was calm. Black Fleet's in full deployment. 12 dreadnoughts, 14 frigates, fighter wings forming up. They're not waiting. Let them come, Daniel said. Human fleets moving into formation, Rye confirmed. 3 sectors in full sync. Bastion reinforcements arriving in 5 minutes. Daniel looked at her. Tell them to hold the flanks. We cut straight through. Her brow furrowed. That'll leave us exposed, I know. He turned towards the forward screen. Earth slowly filled the frame, beautiful and battered. A planet that had once begged for salvation, now standing as the battleground for the truth. He opened the comms. This is Captain Daniel Reich, Earthborn, exiled by force. Today we take back what they tried to bury. This is not about hate. This is about memory. We remember who, where. We remember what they did. And we are done running. He closed the comm and said quietly, Fire all forward weapons. Archangel surged ahead like a wounded predator. The first Council frigate tried to intercept. It never had a chance. Atwin barrage of railgun slugs tore through its midsection, followed by pulse torpedoes that turned its engines into plasma fountains. The human fleet followed, dozens of ships diving into chaos with the desperation of survivors and the fury of the betrayed. All around them, the sky cracked open. Fighters screamed through narrow gaps, tearing into each other in tight dogfights. Frigates collided, exploded, and spun into the upper atmosphere like broken bones. Lasers cut across darkness like divine wrath. The Council deployed their orbital shatter cannons, but human ships darted, flared, countered. Every time a ship went down, another rose to take its place. Daniel barked orders, his voice clear above the madness. Flank right. Shield the carriers. Redirect power to the aft guns. Ray relayed commands, blood trickling from a gash near her ear. We've got a breach on deck 3. Fire suppression failing. Silo! Daniel roared into the comms. Get your team to the breach. We hold this line or we burn. A moment later, Sio's voice came through, rough and horsaro. Deck 3 contained, patching the hull. Don't crash this ship till I get back to my whiskey. Daniel allowed himself a small grin. But the grin vanished when the first dreadnought opened fire. The beam lanced out, a stream of plasma and antimatter slicing a Bastion destroyer clean in half. Another volley followed, this time aimed directly at Archangel. Incoming! Merrick shouted. The crew braced. The blast struck the starboard side, tearing through armor plating like wet paper. The ship spun, alarms howling, consoles sparking, bodies were thrown. Ray slammed into the railing, barely grabbing hold. Daniel hit the floor hard. His ears rang. Smoke filled the bridge, but they didn't stop. Stabilize the spin, he growled, pulling himself upright. Return fire. Hit that thing in the throat. Aranel's railguns fired again, this time guided manually, aimed at a vulnerable seam along the dreadnought's lower hull. The shot struck true. The dreadnought shuddered. Secondary explosions rippled across its body. One of its reactors burst, sending debris spiraling into the void. Cheers erupted across the bridge, ragged, desperate cheers. But Daniel didn't join them. Not yet. There were still 11 more. The battle raged for over an hour. A brutal, ceaseless storm of fire and steel. Human ships sacrificed themselves to protect Earth's orbital defense rings. Kamikaze strikes took down 2 more Council vessels. Bastion deployed boarding pods into one of the dreadnoughts, triggering internal sabotage that turned its own guns against its fleet. Daniel watched the enemy break apart, not just physically but psychologically. They were used to control, not resistance. Now they faced a people with nothing left to lose, and that made them dangerous. Finally, the Council flagship, Verilion Prime, pulled back. Their retreat was silent. No surrender, no message, just shame and silence. 2 days later, Earth was quiet. The skies still burned in places, but the Black Fleet was gone. What was left of the human fleet floated in high orbit, damaged, mourning, but victorious. On the ground, people emerged from shelters and bunkers. They looked to the skies, not with fear, but with awe. Someone had fought for them, and one Daniel stood on the surface, boots sinking into old Earth soil. The crater where New Geneva once stood smoldered in the distance. Ruins, scars, memories. Ray walked up beside him, one arm in Asling. The Council broadcast a message an hour ago. Daniel looked at her. They want a ceasefire, she said. Talks, negotiations. They're calling it a humanitarian solution. He laughed, not with joy, but disbelief. After everything they did, she shrugged. They've lost control. The outer sectors are turning. Some of their own species are demanding tribunals. Daniel stared at the sky. What do you want to do? She asked. He didn't answer right away because he didn't know. 4 months, years, all he'd wanted was vengeance. Now that he had it, what was left? But when he looked at the people climbing out of the bunkers, hugging, rebuilding, burying their dead, he knew. We rebuild, he said finally. We make something better. Not because we forgive them, but because we deserve better. Ray nodded. And the Council? Daniel's eyes hardened. They'll answer in time. The galaxy's awake now. We'll make sure it